Hello and welcome everyone. Good morning, good evening, wherever you're joining us from. Today we have another webinar for you, an exciting one. We will be discussing how to mitigate risk with simplified model checking. So that's our subject for today. Uh, I have joining me, there's Joe and John, as you can see. I will be your host for today, and we have Joe here with us. He's the CEO of Fusiontek. Joe, if you want to introduce yourself.
Thank you, Maya, for having me. Um, yes, my name is Joe Magas. My company is Fusiontek, and we're a Solibri partner in Western Canada. So, really looking forward to the discussion today with you.
Thank you, Joe. Thank you for joining us. And John?
Hi everybody, John Lipp, Customer Success Manager here at Solibri, going over I think 11 years now, just looking to find solutions to customers' problems.
Thank you, John. Thank you for joining us. Yeah, so we have the team here with us today, and we will be discussing the following agenda. I just want to clarify that we will be having the Q&A session around the end of the presentation. But if at any point during this presentation you have any question, please drop it in the chat, and we will get back to it around the end of the session. Yeah, but before we go, we have, as usual, some questions to get to know you better. And the first question is, how often do you use Solibri? Do you use it often, or do you use it less often in some of the projects, or you don't use Solibri? So we would like to get to know the level of Solibri knowledge of our audience so that we can customize this webinar better. However, I see that there's a lot of similar answers, so I will close the poll now. I will wait for a couple of seconds. Please vote if you haven't already. All right, I see that 80% has voted. And it looks like 43% of our audience use it often, and that's the majority. However, 22% have not used Solibri, so we would like to introduce you better to Solibri during this webinar, so that's why we're here. Thank you for your feedback. I will close the poll, and there's another question which is related very much to this subject that we will discuss today. How important is risk reduction for your work? So I would assume that it is important, and that's why you're joining today's webinar. But we would be very curious to know how big of a role risk reduction plays.
The numbers look interesting.
Yes.
Very interesting.
All right, I will give you a couple more seconds to vote. And here are the results. I don't know, what do you think, Joe? I think it's a bit not surprising that most of it is very important.
Well, I think it's good news for us because I think hopefully we're going to hit the right chord. Yeah, I'm glad. It's actually nice. It's nice to see the interest in risk reduction and mitigating risk. That's wonderful.
Great. Yes, definitely. All right, then let's jump right into it. I will give you the control. So, John, you can take over.
So let's talk about, just for a few minutes, the risk you run as an architect. Like, seriously, what could possibly go wrong in this scenario? And the answer is anything or everything could go wrong. And your professional reputation is on the line every step of the way. Let's compare it to another activity. So we'll look at the next slide, John. So, all right, I'm having a little bit of fun here. But what's riskier, architecture or skydiving? Well, initially you might say, well, skydiving clearly has risk to it. I guess the only thing I would argue maybe to reframe it is that there's probably only a couple things that can go wrong when you skydive, mostly involving the parachute. And if you know only a couple things can go wrong, you can double and triple check those things. Other people can check them. When it comes to architecture, there are thousands of things that can go wrong. So how does a person possibly, how do you as an architect possibly double check all those things? Well, I think the answer is it's not really possible without help from technology, without a missing piece. And that's what we're talking about today. So we'll take a look at the next slide in terms of the challenges that an architect has. And I'd love to hear if you have a question or a comment as to whether we hit this right. As an senior architect, project architect, you can't be everywhere at the same time. Have you ever wondered, boy, if I had just been there, if I just saw what was happening in the room or on site, oh, we could have stopped this. But you're only one person and you can't be everywhere. So things get missed. Second challenge, it's hard herding cats. Now you're the quarterback of the project. You call the plays, you call the audibles, but you need other people to do their job. It's a challenge to get people to do their job and to track their progress and make sure they're on task and completing the projects. It must feel like a nightmare on some days, just trying to get everyone moving in the same direction. The third challenge is that the tool that was supposed to help you, BIM, is a bit of a black box. Now, it might not be a black box to your staff. They might fully understand how BIM works. But to the senior architect or the person carrying the most risk of the data in that box, often they're on the outside looking in. It's dark. For example, starting a software like Revit or ArchiCAD is just not something they have time to do in a day. So they might just be waiting for the drawings to come out of this black box so they could review them. You might have to be waiting. You might have to wait. And of course, that's not great because you're responsible for all that data, and it'd be nice for you to see it before it happens. So those are the three challenges we see. What we're posing as a solution, not the only solution, but on the next slide, is to have a simplified approach to model checking. Now, I'm just going to reframe Solibri in a sense in this slide, because we often speak about Solibri as being an advanced tool, and it certainly is. It has robust features. However, once it's been set up, it's remarkably easy to get simple results off of Solibri, to the point that a senior architect, principal in a firm, could use it on a regular basis to monitor the risk, to figure out what's going on, and to try to foresee problems before they happen. So that's what John's going to help me out with. And I sure appreciate having him here to help on the technical side. So let's go into the first point we're going to cover, moving into the demo. Here again, Revit models are large, they're multidiscipline. It's a high risk if you have limited access to them. If you can't see what's in that black box, but you're responsible for what happens in that black box, that's a high risk. How do we lower that risk? Well, with Solibri, you can quickly open any model, control visibility, even add measurements and markups in a very simple fashion. John, would you be kind enough to share your wisdom with us and show us how that could happen,
Yeah, sure, Joe.
even for a senior architect?
Right. Yeah, I'll try to cover it low level and high level because we have some people that already use Solibri. But yeah, at any time, Joe, you feel free to just say hit the pause button for me on me on the demo, and we can dive deeper into if you want to roll back and actually go into more depth. So this is Solibri. This is the interface, and this is the model layout. I don't want to get into the details of it, but you'll always have a 3D view picture of the space of the project. But on top of that, you have a BIM, you have a building information model. So you have all this information at your fingertips. So you want to actually harness that as well. So these views are grouped into these different layouts. And what I'm showing you now is kind of a layout to kind of interrogate the model to quickly, because these applications, design applications, aren't tailored to actually do these reviews as quick as Solibri. So if you wanted to, you can put on your structural hat, and you can isolate the model like that. If you wanted to look at just maybe the MEP, you can turn those components on, right? You can actually go deeper into those individual systems if you wanted to see, all right, where are my ducts and where are those individual types of duct systems in my model, right? So again, you're taking the best of both worlds, the information and the 3D model in that space. If you're interested, for instance, and it's well structured, these BIM models. Again, it's not from a specific design application, so you can have your stakeholders actually view into these review softwares. If it takes less but time to learn a Solibri than a full-blown design software in terms of navigating around and getting the use out of it. But you can actually peer into maybe just the ground floor of your architectural model, right? I guess these curtain walls span up the entire floor. I can turn those off. I have my spaces color coded. I can turn those off, and I can kind of peer into this first level and see kind of a floor plan. If I wanted to, I could actually take an inventory, for instance. Again, in this model tree that's well structured, I'm focusing on the architectural model. I can turn on these three groupings. And this is a selection basket. Think of it as in terms of what you want to visualize and what you want to work with. So now I've just isolated. Again, we're isolating and viewing the information that's important to us. So I can slide down what is called a footprint control, right? And this basically superimposes a plan view. So now I can actually do a walkthrough of the model with like the inventories of the furniture and see where I am, right? And if you're more comfortable, maybe you can take a top-down view. We have different perspectives. Actually, it's called a perspective or orthographic projection. So if you want to take more of a plan view, you can zoom in and say, okay, here's my cafeteria where my tables and chairs are. And again, if you wanted to, you can search on your sanitary terminals and then look at those, and those are my sinks and my toilets. One of the features that Joe and I are quite fond of is the simplicity of the sectioning. So you don't have to know where your section planes are, X, Y, Z, in terms of that, but we have a tool called sectioning, and if you hover over it, it'll give you a little hot tip of all the different hotkeys, so you can really quickly, just by hitting keys on the keyboard, tailor to what you need. But even at that, it's so simple. You click on a surface. Let's go over here, and think of it kind of like a first I have to click it. Sorry. Click on a surface. Now I got a section plane, but think of it kind of like a CAT scan or an MRI or maybe one of those anatomy books of the human anatomy, where it actually color codes, the systems of a body. This is like the systems of your BIM, and it's actually color coding, and you can customize. I have mine set to be blue for architecture, structurals green, and MEP is red. So as I cut through and splice through this model, you can see I've come to here my stair, my fire exit stair. And you can see the structural. This is probably why it's because it's fire rated walls here, structural walls, and this is my red systems of MEP. If I go a little bit further in, here I can see here's a mechanical shaft. Here's my little elevator shaft, and mechanical runs down. And again, you can even turn on spaces here. And if I wanted to, I could actually section real quickly just around this space. This is my meeting room. Click OK. I have my walls and the spaces turned on. Again, I could use keyboard shortcuts, or I can just turn off walls, turn off spaces, and then there you go. I have my sectioned room.
Wow.
Right? You can turn this on, and you can drag these little corners here, which is pretty neat. If you get to it, and you can actually drag them up. If you get to it. There you go. Sorry, I keep on clicking the wrong button.
No, it's
There you
beautiful
go.
how simple it is.
Yeah,
Oh,
so you can,
wonderful.
yeah, because there's so many different ways you can section these planes so quick. But yeah,
Yeah.
that's the gist of that.
So it simplifies the BIM experience for an architect to get in there and start. Maybe later in the evening. I know many of you work late evenings, but just to open up the latest, see what's happening, make sure everything's on track. That was beautiful, John. Thanks so much. Um, so let's go a little deeper into visual checks. Now you did a little bit of that, but let's see if we can go a little further. So what's high risk, John? When we look at high risk, we'll just display the next point. In terms of BIM, as we mentioned, the senior architect is often on the outside looking in, maybe asking for or waiting for a set of drawings to be created. But that's higher risk because that means possibly hours, days, and weeks that are missed. But with Solibri, we can actually apply color coding. So for example, if you wanted to check the fire rating, you don't have to look at the plans to see what the fire rating is on every wall. You can visually color code the model and spaces, um, and even extract quantities. John, can you show us how that's possible? This color coding to visualize the model and the data.
Yeah, sure, Joe. Um, as you said, actually, maybe we didn't say it. It's called classification, but you can think of it as organizing your components by some property or a category. That's what you could say. So I showed that briefly with the systems, but as Joe mentioned, you can do that for fire ratings. So if I wanted to put on my fire life safety hat, I could actually click on fire ratings and now turn everything on the model, turn my fire ratings on, and you can see it's grouping these components and visualizing again best of both worlds information and model uh, based off of those fire ratings. So if I wanted to just focus on the 1 hour, 1.5 hour, and 30 minutes, you can see these are predominantly coming from my structural model for my 1 hour, and these 30 are my architecture partition walls, right? And so you can turn things on and off and dig into it if you want to do. Sure enough, this is my 2 hour rating structural walls that goes down my fire exits. Right? I can see my elevator shafts, right? And
And
it's
just to
actually
get just yeah, and just to clarify for everyone, we're looking at through fire rating, but we could also look at it like through structural or non-structural members. We could look at that data in all kinds of different ways. Is that correct, John?
Yeah, so what I did was, if you look at this, all of these components have a property that's associated with it. And it's nice because it actually standardizes where they're located. So it's grabbing the fire rating. And that's how it knows that this slab is a 1.5 hour fire rating. And what it does is it just takes that value, maps it into this classification so you don't have to go digging around and do it. Solibri does the work for you, going off, finding all these components, see, does it have this property? It does. What's the value? And just it categorizes it such. Right? And so
Doing
you
that
can do the
automatically.
same thing.
Nice.
Like if you wanted to look, you can see that it has the standard properties of a slab. You can tell whether or not it's load bearing or not, as you mentioned. Now I could just very quickly, if I just wanted to click the create classification, just on the fly do that as well. All right. Yeah, we mentioned space. We have a space a usage here, and think of that as the functionality of the space, right? You have a room name, it's a corridor, it's a stairwell. That would be circulation space. So as I expand this out, Solibri, what it's doing, it's not taking the value and mapping it. It's directly from the value. It's actually saying the value is a stair, or it's a lobby. So that means it's a circulation space, and that's how it actually is smart enough. Because when it comes to any type of check, how do you know the difference between a sanitary terminal that's a sink versus a toilet? You have to look and see what the type is. So that's essentially what Solibri is doing. And again, you can either look at it from this perspective. There's so many different views you have in Solibri. And what I'm going to touch on is called takeoff. Think of it as um, a room schedule, or just a spreadsheet, right? You're pulling out quantities, you're pulling out information from the model. And so what it does is I can select on multiple rows here, And as I click on those rows, it's actually isolating those components. In this case, they're spaces. So I can actually see the information related to this ground floor, the circulation, and the areas, right? So it's saying, again, circulation, lobby. For instance, it knows that a cafeteria is the mercantile. And I can actually jump to that location as well. Select on multiple ones. Remember the kitchen, I think was under, oh, it's right here. Kitchen, cafeteria, again, it maps that. So I can actually select on multiple ones, right? And kind of get a feel. I need to have my water closets and my toilets next to my cafeteria and that space. And again, you can even, if you want to, kind of do a walkthrough, right? So you can actually be inside of your room schedule, right? Walk around, turn things on.
That's
I can actually
fantastic.
turn on my walk tool, turn back on my space usage, and start turning things on like walls and doors. And as I walk through, again, you can see, all right, here's my circulation space. Here's other circulation. Here's a little toilet. So that's how you can get a walkthrough and understand the layout of your building.
Well, it's like shining a light into that black box and color coding it to
Yeah.
however you want to see it. And that's beautiful. Thanks for showing us that.
I
Um,
forgot to mention, you can actually take as you click on them, it actually counts them for you. So you can see as I
yeah,
select on this, it's giving me that square footage. So you can do your takeoffs if you're interested in that.
yeah.
So, yep, thanks.
No, beautiful. Nice job. Let's talk about our next use case scenario. So this is where Solibri shines the most. Now, there's many other features like John has shown, but when people think of Solibri, they think of rule checking. But let's talk about not having Solibri and the risk you run. Projects get reviewed, and I'm not no aspersions on anyone on how you do things. I'm speaking in general here, of course, but projects are typically reviewed in a manual, unscheduled fashion, and things can get missed because of that. However, with Solibri, what you can do, what someone can do for you, is take your knowledge. You say, well, hey, I want to make sure there's a drain in every washroom, or at least I want to check. That's a thing with me. I've seen big liability with not having a drain. So I want you to take my experience, my pain, what I've learned, and make a rule out of it so that every project gets checked. And every project will get checked by your knowledge in a consistent basis. Now, I think John's going to show us some slides here that's going to show us kind of these two approaches and how Solibri is superior to manual checks.
Yeah, exactly. So imagine you're an architect and you're juggling multiple projects. So here's your architect. Here are all your projects that you have to contend with. Each has its own challenges, its own deadlines. So you can't be everywhere, as Joe said. It's nearly impossible. And once things start falling apart, things start slipping through the cracks, right? You might be missing deadlines, but that crunch is actually going to make you have human error. It's just human nature. Whereas if you have Solibri, steps in as a solution, you get consistent and complete. It's a machine doing the work for you. It's always going to do it at the same time. It's consistent, and it's going to check for every single component. It's going to check for every room that you need to have an accessible, turning radius for a wheelchair, or every single door has to have accessibility, or whatever you can think of. So you're not going to miss anything with a human error. So Solibri does the work for you. You can even schedule this to automate Solibri to actually schedule this to run whenever your convenience, run every week, run during the hours when you're not in operation, so that you can focus on the tasks to actually solve the problems and not finding them.
That's great. Hey, John, can you show us this in real life?
Into another layout, and you can think of these as different roles or different perspectives or different lenses.
Yeah,
So
different
this is
different hat.
yeah, different hat, exactly. So before you're reviewing and not in the checker, and again, all of these different rule sets can be different. You actually have roles in Solibri, so you can do energy analysis, you can do accessibility checks, or what we're going to be showing are more of the coordination types of checks. So what I'm going to be focusing on is a component distance check. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to open up the rule parameters, and as you can see, it gives us a nice little graphic. And we have, whole bunch of different ways you can check for these what are soft clashes. How close is it to one another? Now this one is just doing the footprint, but you could do it above and below. Say you have a pipe that was to burst above electrical room, you can check for that with offsets. But this one's checking for the footprint. You can see here that if there's a light switch that's closer than 8 inches to a door, that could cause problems with the structural of the door. So in Solibri, and you can change this. I mean, these are just filters. Think of it as grouping or categories of what you want to check. And it's just saying if it says switch in the type, then you want to check how close is the door.
I'm sorry to interrupt you, John, but you could do the opposite. You could say how if a switch is too far from a door.
All right.
Can you do that as well? I mean, you don't have to demonstrate it. I'm just, you can go too close, you can go too far.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it doesn't have to be, it could actually be checking for the door swings, right? It doesn't have to be within the footprint. So if obviously something would be, you see those little funny pictures of online of like a toilet that has the door cut out or whatever. But that's basically it. Yeah, exactly. You can check for the maximum distance. Does something have to be no further? Like a fire extinguisher can't be further than 10 feet from the fire exit, right? So yeah, exactly, Joe. You can change these. Again, no, it's not a one size fits all for BIM. You're gonna have to custom tailor these. And going back to the black box, Solibri isn't a black box. You can custom tailor it and tweak it to however you need. But another beautiful thing about it is the way it presents the issues, right? You have this results view, and it has its own built-in category. So it's actually giving me a visualization out of the box where what the floor is, and then what are the components. And if I select on it, it actually tells me what room it's in. It's in my meeting room. And depending on how you want to create this, what is a slide that you're going to inevitably have with your coordination meeting, I could take a top-down, again, different perspectives, different views. I could take a top-down view of it and create a slide for it. Right?
Shows you the dimensions.
I'm not going to go into the issue management. That'll come later. But again, this is the second floor. I could go move over here. Maybe I want to see not the perspective. Maybe I want to turn everything on. Click the view all. And then maybe I just want to kind of zoom out and see, oh, this is my meeting room. And I can highlight again. And you'll see this later in the portion where we're doing the coordination. But now we have 2 slides. Or maybe you just want to see where the hotspots are. If I do a perspective view and a top down, you can see when I select them all, it looks like they're all in the meeting rooms, right? Too close to the doors. So I can actually select on this multi-select issues and create one slide. Again, you're trying to save time times money. You don't want to create individual issues for each one. And again, as I said before, you can automate this. You can have this run unattended, autonomously, or you can go into the details of it. It's all depends on what you want. Do you want to actually shine the flashlight into that black box, as Joe said? So
that's like, imagine if I can only imagine the frustration of an architect that would see the same issue come up on multiple projects, and it just be. I'm not an architect, but I just imagine how frustrating that would be. This could help eliminate that by taking that knowledge you have and making a code out of it, making a machine out of it. That can be refined over time. I mean, this is fantastic for reducing risk, and the fact that you can apply it to every project consistently is a game changer. So thanks for showing that, John. That was very, very good.
You're welcome.
Let's take a look at the next use case we're talking about. So yeah, so let's face it, architects are focused on architecture. That's your focus. But part of the scope that you deal with is coordinating the engineering designs and doing coordination between them. But and I hope I'm not out of line to say this, I think this often gets left to the end of a project, and perhaps that's not the best time. Perhaps perhaps doing it a little earlier might be less risky than leaving it to the end. But with Solibri, and we're going to show a new feature here. So if we have Solibri users that are joining that haven't downloaded the latest version, this is new. But with Solibri, you can display a report that organizes coordination issues throughout the project. How everything could affect everything. Now, that being said, John's going to simplify it and show us how we can group things, how we can simplify it, but you're going to be able to see how anything could affect anything. John, can you walk us through that?
Sure. What is called as the clash detection matrix. I think it was one of the first rules that was ever developed was the general intersection rule. But the beauty of the clash matrix, once I get this to here. Bear with me one moment.
Oh yeah, take your time.
I guess just refreshing the screen.
One of the problems with traditional clash detection is, and just to step in front of John, is sometimes you can get a long list of false positives. In other words, it's not that you get too few clashes, you tend to get too many, and then you can't find the legit ones in the group. That's the problem with modern day clash detection. But John's got a beautiful chart here. It takes a different approach.
Yeah, sorry about that. I just had to refresh.
No problem. No, I like a little more airtime myself. So
there you go. Let's talk. But yeah, again, what he mentioned was you get this report. So it's like you're using the report of the issues while you're setting up the actual basis of what you're checking, because this is the actual parameterization of the check. You're going to set up, and you can do it any way you want. You can customize this, but you're doing different levels. And don't think of it, it looks overwhelming, but the beauty of it is it's actually giving you all of this information at once, color coding things and giving you counts to work from. So the matrix, think of it as a table. You have different levels of where you're going to start from. So you start from perhaps the discipline, as you see here. And then underneath that, it'll actually calculate or actually find whatever components that are in your model, right? You can click a button, it'll say these are the models, or these are the components in your MEP building services. So in traditional, from what I see, there's plenty of clash software, and a lot of times you're just kind of stuck with this flat list that you have to go through, and they'll give you
it's a big one. It's a big list.
Yeah, and they'll give you some tools, like you can click on something and you can group by that component. And with Solibri, you get the best of not both worlds, but three worlds. Again, you get this 3D display, right? So if I wanted to, I could click on, for instance, just the pipes and the pipes fittings that are running into my architectural model. And I could work from here, or I could work from the 3D view, right? I can come in here and start clicking on pipes that are running into one another. Or I could work from this hierarchy, right? This is in here. It's well organized, but it's still buried kind of underneath this structure here that I see that there's a pipe versus the wall. I got 103, and that matches up with this value here. I could right click, say select all in results view, and now it's nice enough to give me those selected so I can work from here again. Or what I showed before is that select basket. It basically doesn't just isolate, but it also lets you kind of manipulate whatever you put in that basket. So I set those to be the ones I want to focus on, and then I can actually filter. I can put that lens on my my clashes, right? And so now it's going to take all of the other clashes that were listed before when I set no filtering, selection basket, all. Let me see if it's giving me a little freeze. There we go. Sorry, I got 3 applications open. By the way, I got some. I'll show you.
Your machine's doing well.
Well, yeah, it's the fan's spinning so fast it's about to lift off the desk. So these are it's limiting. It's showing you now only those 172, and you can see it matches up with the counts here. I got 103 plus 69. So what I want to do is I want to chip away at that. I don't have the time to go through each one of these individually again, right? So I'm going to put on a different lens. I'm going to put on my MEP system lens, right? I showed you that classification before. So what I do is I click on this. For some reason it's in room. Let's see. Essentially what I had before was I was actually looking at the distance between the light fixtures and the doors. So what happens is now it's kind of resetting the because it has to calculate the rooms. So
Perfect. So this, in essence, this when we talk about triple checking your parachute, this is like a triple check because you can have it in the design the class matrix. You can visually see it, or you can have the long list of the checking results.
yeah, exactly. So what happened was it was actually looking at I think there's probably 5,000 checks and trying to figure out where they are in each room. So instead, I'm going to look at it from the perspective of the system, which I have set now. So if I click on the ground floor, it'll now limit just the clashes on the ground floor. So, and then, well, that's fine. But what if I wanted to actually just look at some of these systems here? I could look at my domestic cold water. So some of these are non-issues, and we do have a rule, the general intersection rule, which can create exceptions that if it runs straight through the wall, you can just turn those off and ignore them. But what I'll look at is the sanitary. And again, best of 3 different worlds. I can actually go into the model now and say, okay, it looks like I got some pipes that aren't directly inside. They're kind of hanging out the walls, right? I can actually go in here. And what I'll do is I'll just turn on everything and get a little eyeball of it, right? Hide. Oh, sure enough, there's a pipe that's running alongside this wall. So again, if I click on the issues here, what I can do is turn on my selection tool, and again, I'm going to select it, but I'm going to actually just drag around it. Right? I'm going to drag around these components that I want to create a group for, because I can see it's a span of pipes, and there's pipe fittings, there's pipe segments. I want to get that one too. So as you drag around, it'll select whatever's inside your box. And now what I'm going to actually do, I actually have to click on the wall too, because that's part of the problem, is I'm going to actually go to that flat list, because we do have a flat. If you want to work from a flat list, we have it. You click the flat list. Actually, first I have to click by selection basket. Again, set the selection basket. Now I'm working from what I had selected. It's my flat list. I have 5 clashes, but I have 1 issue. It's not about issue. It's not about clash management as much as issue management. I don't have to go through each one of these individual, pipe segments. It's all one. I create 1 issue, 1 slide for my team to review to just say, put that in the wall. Right? Does that make sense? And again, you get all this other information down here as well. The length, the tolerances, and everything. It tells you which room it is.
Beautiful, beautiful demonstration. This would be a little more technical on the technical side, but you can the ability to group these things and filter them really can make this manageable. Would you agree with
Yeah.
that?
Oh, yeah. And I think also to touch on, so I can come back in here and I set these back to what I'm working on, and I come back into this view
Mm-hmm.
and I set it to my selection basket. And you can see I've knocked out 5 issues. Otherwise, I'd have to go through 5. And how are you going to work that way? You have to kind of click on. I mean, you can do it that way if you want.
Yeah.
You could actually click on a pipe here, and you can see all of that issue data.
Okay.
But
So
the beauty is you're using, again, the 3 worlds. You got the clash matrix, you got this hierarchy of the results, and you also have the 3D view, so you can quickly jump around. And as I knock these out, you can focus. I even mentioned you can actually parameterize, and that's the main benefit of this matrix, is that I could click on one of these cells, say that my structural duct versus my beams, right? Say that's a high severity. I could say that's a high severity critical issue that I want to focus on first. I can filter by that. So what I mean here, I can come into this checking, turn off what I've already found, right? And now it drops out. I no longer see, those issues anymore.
nice. Well, you keep mentioning issues, John. So we're going to have to go on to how do we handle an issue, or what is an issue. So is it okay if we switch back to the PowerPoint there? Yeah. So one of the most dangerous things an architect does, what you do every day, is go to work and open Outlook. Email is dangerous for tracking things. I mean, how often did something get lost? How often are you searching in your email for some word that you remember? It's just not great in terms of risk management. Things can get lost and missed. Now with Solibri and Contenda. So just to be clear, we're introducing another system, a platform called Contenda. It's an issue management um, common data environment, a place to put stuff and a place to track issues. Okay, so we're going to show these two programs together. Solibri beautifully handles the integration between them, but the bottom line is you get an automated audit trail of who's supposed to do what and whether they've done it or not. John, can you illustrate how this would happen in the simplest way possible?
Oh yeah. So here's a little a diagram. So here's you. You run your checks in Solibri. If you want, you can actually run your coordination meetings within the application. But I'm not going to get into the details of BCF Live, but you're probably familiar with it. It's just a way so you to transfer these issues standardized to some other platform, as you mentioned, a CDE, Common Data Environment. Think of it as a repository for the massive amounts of all the project data you have. You can throw your models up there, your 3D models. You can throw up your issues up there, and you can throw up anything you want, really. You send those off, and you have this sync. It's called the BCF Live, right? It syncs up your issues to Contenda Hub. You work from there. You have your stakeholders. Maybe they're not as technically savvy. You have your people that's peering in and working from a standardized location where you can actually log in. It keeps it much safer than just transferring, clash reports via email. It goes to the wrong person, or it gets deleted, or it goes to spam. Those can then get pushed out, assigned to the people in the applications to fix, right? They sync up as well. They could be working. I'll show you. Working along, and then they see the new tasks are basically there for them to work from. They fix it, they sync back up into Contenda, and this three-way synchronization works. So as soon as the engineer actually fixes something and comments, the person in Solibri will know just as well, using Contenda as that middleman to actually do it.
Very, very nice
So
explanation.
I'll jump right into so I created some issues here. So I can go into the communication. As I said, you could actually work from Solibri. So I could create a presentation of my checking results, right? I could actually just navigate around and start creating a presentation on my own, not using the checking, but I've already done the work, or Slibri's already done the work of these checks. So these are live views. Again, I could turn on everything and create another picture, I guess you'd say, or a perspective or a lens. And I can add another slide and then jump between the two, right? This one shows this one shows this. And this was like the historical way, because Sleepy's been around 25 years. We didn't have CDEs back then. And from here, you can create your comments. But what is the whole point of BIM? Actually, BIM, not as just a model, but as the whole process, is the ability to actually collaborate with one another. Yeah. So what I have here is called Contenda Hub, linked up through my BCF Live connector. And I can click on this. This actually isn't part of Sleepy. This is up in the cloud of Contenda. And what I can do is I can jump into Contenda right now. And this is the dashboard, right? This is where you have your all your participants and all the issues and all the documents. But I'm just going to focus on the issues, what Contenda calls topics, right? So I can see where this actually came from. If I click on this, this is just a nice little information view, and you can set different parameters of, say, for instance, this this meeting room. And again, people don't have to install software, design software. They just go and look at it on the web, right? It's
so just to be clear, we're looking in Contenda now. Right, that someone could open even without Solibri. This is web-based. Yeah.
Well, actually, we're looking at a browser with a beautiful, and it's really cool.
Okay. I mean, yeah. Sorry to interrupt you. It's so seamless that the audience might not follow. Right? We went from Solibri, and now we're in a web that other people can access all this data as well, and the issues.
Yep, exactly. So that's the whole point. I'm in Solibri looking at the same issue. So I could actually start adding information within Solibri here, like setting a date, syncing up. I mean, I could do that. I could change it to whatever. But what I want to do is I want to push these issues I had created into Contenda. So what I can do is just import my issues that I created. And recall I created, they're from that presentation. So I'll just click OK. And now what happens is it's not synchronizing. I want to have more control of when it synchronizes. You could just have it automatically, populate this as you go, but I have it set to synchronize, so I have to click mark as ready because I actually want to look at some of these. Again, I can say, is this ready to go? Or I could say, I want to assign a date to it. Or maybe you want to leave that, I could assign it to somebody, say I want to assign it to John Lipp. And another, again, the beauty of this is it's using the information in Contenda. It's saying assign to John Lipp. I'm the only one in this project as of right now. So I could have 50 people and then it'll populate that. And that's, again, they log in with the password, everything's secure. But what you'd really want to do, and I can mark this as ready, and what you'll see is these little spinning icons then start turning green as it takes those and transfers them up to Contenda. I could just, select all of them and say just mark as ready. And what you'll see is they'll start spinning. And that one turned green. And what it does is every 5 seconds it'll sync up with Contenda, and it'll give you that information up there. So when I go back into Contenda and I populate, you can see they're starting to be there. They weren't there before. And now I can actually look at that same view within Contenda, right? This is just limiting to the two objects, but it's more interesting. F5 on the keyboard, just like a browser, it updates. Right, and here are my. You can see the picture that was created in Solibri with the beautiful red highlighting of the intersection, or you can actually go into the direct view within Contenda. Again, now it's showing that. Right. Again, you can turn. It has all its capabilities. You can turn everything on, show all, and see that same pipe there and review it. So, but even more importantly, you have to get this back to the person that's going to fix it, right? Well, Contenda has a link to it as an extension. So what I can do now is refresh here. I already have that one view, again, of that meeting room already loaded in Contenda, right? Or into ArchiCAD. This is Graphisoft ArchiCAD. That's where the model comes from. I can now come into this and say, oh, okay, I have an issue here to fix. It's my my light switch too close to a door. Again, I can click on this, and then it's taking me to that same perspective. It's taking me to that same lens of two components that are too close to one another. So then it'll update my view here. It should show me that.
Yeah, there's some magic under the hood there with the format that's used, called BCF, BIM collaboration format, but it stores all that data, the rich data about, so any app, so there we are, we're in the BIM model and we can find the exact spot where the issue applies.
Yeah, so I just move it over here. I say, all right, it's fixed. Submit it. And now this is going to sync up with Contenda. And that comment will then go back. What I would do is I would fix it, upload the models to Contenda Hub, and pull them down automatically through Solibri, through its integration through Contenda to open it. So yeah, if I go back into Contenda, I should see, if I go back into the other issue, there should be a comment somewhere. Is it this one? It's fixed. See? So now people in Contenda, they know it's fixed. And Solibri should be telling me as well.
That's terrific. Of course, it's not just John talking to himself. These would be other users to demo it. John talking to himself, which is fantastic. Yeah. So, but the bottom line to this is it's a complete synchronized audit trail of all the issues and all the comments and all the resolutions, and it allows the quarterback to see the whole field when he's calling a play. Would you agree with that?
Oh yeah, I mean that's the whole point of what you said with the black box, and the whole. If you're actually going to harness what a BIM is, and all of the tools that are available to actually coordinate and collaborate, it's a must.
So often we think about BIM as data, but I think some of us need to reconsider that BIM is about communication, and so it's about that herding cats thing, right? Keeping everyone going in the right direction, right?
I mean, it's you can think about the collaboration part or the efficiencies, or even looking at green building. It's not just a model; it's the entire process involved to keep people on the same page.
Well, we're coming close to the wrap up time here, so we just have a couple more just to wrap up. Problems are costly. Now, how expensive is a problem? Because the ripple effect hits a problem. It starts small, early maybe, but when it finally does its impact, it's amazing how much these problems can cost to multiple parties. So then, what if we just caught it first? On the next slide. An ounce of prevention, right? So issues that are found earlier are just less expensive. A baby issue is more than a big problem, or a baby issue is cheaper than a big problem. And really, we can reduce risk by adopting a model checking approach and having a proactive attitude toward finding these errors before they become problems. So, in summary, with Solibri, just to give a high level summary, thanks for joining us so far. In terms of Solibri, excellent investment on return on investment. If you just prevented a few errors every project, it would pay for itself like lickety split. Very, very good return on investment. Next, in terms of licensing, there's a cloud-based licensing, which means that not everyone in your organization needs a license of Solibri. Depending on your size, 1, 2, or 3 might be sufficient. So it's to me, it's very affordable to get this functionality to everyone with the cloud-based licensing. And also, there's also a subscription and perpetual licensing right now. But perpetual licensing may not be that around that much longer, so there's a sale on that. I think Maya was going to comment on that in wrapping as to why there's a sale, what people can do to reach out. Maya, are you able to
Thanks,
join us?
Joe.
Yeah.
Yes, yes. I'm glad that you're still with us because I have some good news. So if you don't know already, Solibri is turning 25 this year, and we're celebrating our anniversary. And to give back to the community, we decided that um, we will give you one more chance to get a Solibri perpetual license. So it's a lifetime. You will get 25% off if you decide to get Solibri Office perpetual license. So make sure you take a screen grab of the contact information so that you can contact Joe or our office in the US, and then you can get this offer. This is again time limited because starting from January 1st, we will stop all perpetual licenses and we are moving more towards the subscription model. So yeah, I will also send you a follow-up email that will contain also more information. All right, so we're reaching the end of our presentation, but if you have any questions, now is the time to ask, so please drop it in the chat. Annabelle is asking, will the perpetual license also be available in Europe? Yes, of course. It's available globally. But you can contact us through our website. It's there, the main button. So you can fill out the form and contact us, and we will be in contact with you regarding this offer. But this is a pre-access to the offer. So to everybody who is watching us and live or later on through the recording. So this is a pre-access to this offer. Yes, thank you, Annabelle. And are there any other questions?
Well, Annabelle had another question about the clash detection matrix.
Mm-hmm. So there's a question for the clash detection matrix. Do watch out for grouping of different entities when models have the types of entities. Some clashes might not show up in the right category. art versus artwork versus or art versus cons. Okay. Mm, I'll let
Yeah,
John comment
yeah, I
on
think
that.
yeah, as you see, the class matrix basically is just a it's just rows and columns. So as long as those disciplines, I mean, it's all about how you map. When you first load any project into Solibri, you have to set the discipline, and you can classify by whatever you want. So classification, we didn't really go into the depths of it, but it's actually, you need to use it most of the time when you're running checks. So using classification, you can make sure nothing gets missed. Like if you were wanting to classify based off of types, as I said before, sinks versus toilet fixtures, they're just sanitary terminals. You use the type to actually classify those, or spaces or whatnot. So hopefully that answers that.
Thank you, John. Yeah, uh, I see that there are no more questions in the chat. So I will give you a couple more minutes or seconds. But if no questions, I think we can wrap up the session. Thank you all for joining us today, and thank you so much, Joe and John, for this great presentation. I really enjoyed it, seeing different scenarios and how you can tackle them with Solibri. So I hope our audience enjoyed it as well. And if we hope to see you again very soon. We're planning another webinar around the end of September, so stay tuned for that. All right,
Thank you.
thank you very much, and see you later. Bye bye.
Bye bye.
Bye.